Welcome everybody to the George Mokoena show. It's really good to speak to you guys. I'm going to speak to you guys about a couple of topics. Welcome everybody. Subscribe if you have not subscribed. This, of course, is the show where I get to tell you what I'm thinking about certain things that are happening in football. If you do want to chat to me live, you will be able to do that on the other show. There's another show Monday to Thursday at 7 p.m. But here, I just want to get my thoughts across about whatever we are talking about. Today, I've got 5 topics for you. We're going to talk Benni McCarthy, possibly going back to AmaZulu wanting him back. We're going to talk Itumeleng Khune and his refusal to retire. We're going to talk about VAR. We're going to talk about the AFL. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the big game over the weekend that is going to be the MTN 8 final between Orlando Pirates and Stellies. Okay, so let's jump straight into it. Benni McCarthy is apparently back in the country. He's done some things with Supersport up to this point. There have been some things that have been shot with him. Benni McCarthy, of course, was overseas at Manchester United, where he was the strikers coach for Erik ten Hag's team. But when the season ended, they decided to add Ruud van Nistelrooy to that technical team and take Benni out. So he is currently a free agent. For those who don't know, Benni McCarthy coached Cape Town City and then coached AmaZulu to second place before a falling out with management caused him to leave. An alleged falling out, just to be sure, an alleged falling out forced him out of the club. So now Benni McCarthy is apparently back in the country, but there's 2 rumors that are swirling. Rumor number 1 is that Benni McCarthy is wanted by Mamelodi Sundowns. Allegedly, he has had conversations with the Mamelodi Sundowns leadership, Abo Fleming Beg, about possibly taking the job. We all know that Coach Mangoba Mngqithi, while he's the head coach right now, he hasn't been confirmed fully as the head coach. And you'd imagine that it wasn't a change that happened because it needed to happen or something that was planned. I feel as though Rulani left and they had their falling out and ubambisile man uKosh Mangoba. So there is that rumor that is going to Sundowns. But now with AmaZulu firing Pablo Franco Martin this past week, just a couple of days ago, it means that that vacancy at AmaZulu is open and maybe they'd go back to him, which is a very interesting thing that would happen. Now, Benni McCarthy is a very good coach. I think Benni McCarthy is one of the standout local coaches. We saw what he did with Cape Town City. I believe he won the MTN 8, if I'm not mistaken. And then before and after that, he managed to take AmaZulu into Africa. They were second. Since then, AmaZulu has been struggling to get back to that point. We've seen Abo coach for khoza come in. We've seen Pablo Franco Martin come in. And it hasn't been very good on their side. So now what I want to speak about in this segment, honestly, is it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me that a team could get rid of a coach who was doing very well at the time, who wanted resources allegedly, who wanted a commitment from the club to go forward. And the club moved him out and then brought in some European coaches that they've given leeway, they've given time, they've given resources, they've given backing. And I think that is a very interesting take, an interesting thing that happens in South African football, where our own locally based coaches are not taken as seriously as overseas coaches. Benni McCarthy, of course, is a Champions League winner. We know the history that he has. At some point, he was the 2nd top goal scorer in England. I believe there was a season where he had outscored Cristiano Ronaldo. He has done so much in the game. And to get him, and especially after him doing well, and to kick him out is not something new, unfortunately, in the South African game. And for me, it's very worrying. You look at other coaches, you think about your Lithonola Siemas, who also got moved out of Kukune after putting them in a place where they could play African football, but to bring in an overseas coach who then kind of flopped or had his personal issues come in and he had to leave. Now they're back with Siema. We think about Botan Dans, who are fired one day, hired, the next day fired, the next day hired by another team, then go back. I think now it's his 3rd or 4th run with Timarumo Gallants. We know that he's had long runs as well with Pochipa United. It's a telling sign that maybe our teams don't take our coaches seriously. But more importantly, do they take the recruitment of coaches seriously enough? I've often questioned that when these coaches are brought into these clubs, Is there a future planning that happens? Is there a style of play that they want to bring into the club and play? Or are they signing just because somebody is available? And this is something that we have to speak about with our clubs, because they'll have coaches that do well, get rid of those coaches, and then completely change the style of play. And what was stopping you from sticking with Benni at the beginning, giving him what he had asked for, and then reaping the rewards, only to turn around and spend the same amount of money for the next couple of months? It's like trying to save for something. You're saving for something. You say you don't want to buy a TV because you're saving for a couch, but then you go and get a coffee table that costs just as much. What is happening at our clubs that is making sure that, you know, we are seeing continuity at the clubs, that we are seeing styles of play develop, that we're seeing coaches develop? Imagine what Benni McCarthy would have been right now had he stayed in South Africa, had he stayed at AmaZulu for 3-4 years. Imagine what type of development he would have made as a head coach. Imagine what he could have brought to the game. Imagine having another coach who might be elite. We don't have that many elite coaches within our borders. We don't have so many elite coaches that are South African. There's only a handful that you can point at, and only a handful that can actually do as well as he did at smaller clubs. So I really wonder what the planning processes for our clubs are. I really wonder what they're thinking, what they go through, what the boards and all of those guys have to say when they make these type of decisions. Now, Pablo Franco Martin, we were told that he's a former Real Madrid assistant coach. Apparently, the real story is that he was a performance analyst for Real Madrid for 5 months. But they've been brought in with the UEFA A licenses. There's probably all types of costs that go with bringing in a foreigner into the country to come coach. And it's not to say that foreigners are bad. That's not what I'm arguing here. My argument is, what did he bring that was different to our local coaches? And why is it that the local coaches aren't taken seriously? I stand to be corrected, but I don't believe Pablo Franco Martin in his 2 seasons here had finished close to a top 8 spot. And also, maybe we need to start looking at ourselves also. The way that we treat the coaches, the way we speak about them, the way we praise them. So many people were saying here that, no, give Pablo Franco Martin time because he's cooking. There's something happening at AmaZulu, man. His UEFA B is working, his UEFA A is working. You look at how we speak about others, like Sid Ramovic at TS Galaxy. Sid Ramovic at TS Galaxy, yes. Did he finish, I believe he finished 7th or 6th last season, which is a great return, I guess, for TS Galaxy, but it's his 3rd season there. Yet we still say, no, he's cooking, he's doing this, he's doing this. Dan Dance has a trophy with TS Galaxy, for example. Yet we tend to talk down on our coaches. Even when you look at those management issues, listen to how glowing Ubab Zungu was when he spoke about Ufohloza, Coach Foltz. To the point where he wanted to keep him as technical director when Romain Foltz wanted to leave that club. He wanted to keep him on. He was willing to even give him a new job. Listen to how glowing he spoke about Pablo Franco Martin, even gave him a nickname, the Jimpi. When are we going to take our own coaches serious? And on the matter of Benni McCarthy, honestly, I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't go to AmaZulu. I would rather go to Sundowns if those are the 2 offers that are on the table. His agent Umwar has said that there's no chance of him going back to AmaZulu, and he refused to be drawn into speaking about Mamelodi Sundowns. But if I was to make a choice, I'd go to Sundowns, because if Benni McCarthy can take AmaZulu to number 2 with little resources, imagine what he can do at Mamelodi Sundowns, a team that for all intents and purposes functions like a top team. Functions like a non-African team, unfortunately. The types of players they sign, the resources they give, the trust they give to coaches. Now, will the styles of play and the history of Shushan and Piano match? I don't know. But if you were to put those 2 offers in front of me, I'd probably go with Mamelodi Sundowns, to be honest with you. So that is what I wanted to speak about in topic 1. Let's move on to another legendary player who's having quite a difficult time right now. So Itumeleng Khune allegedly has rejected a non-playing contract. He still wants to play for all intents and purposes, but to be fair to him, he has started working for SABC, so maybe the rumors aren't completely true. Itumeleng Khune last played in May, and that of course was one game that he played, I believe, last season. And the season before was the first time Khune had played less than 10 games, if I'm not mistaken, or at least had one appearance. So it wasn't looking good for Itumeleng Khune, and I don't doubt that he'll be able to find a club. I think there's plenty of PSL clubs that would need a player of Itumeleng Khune's experience. I think that he wouldn't struggle, especially in the PSL, because the PSL does love their older players. I mean, Khune is 37, and you look at Darren Keat, who plays for Cape Town City as a starter. He's 35. We know that we often joke, Uti, some of these players, when they hit 30, 32, 33, that's when they're spring chickens. They're hitting their stride in the PSL. So I don't think that he will struggle to find a team. But there is a conversation here to be had. And the reason why I have Uthemba Zwane here is, how do we transition our older players into retirement, into other roles? Do we as fans and teams maybe keep these players too long? And what type of spaces are they closing for other players that might want to come into there? I mean, if Itumeleng Khune, who has done pretty much everything you could do in South African football, is trying to hold on and trying to play, how many keepers are going to come in through that line? Ricardo Goss was speaking about how they need to put a ban on foreign goalkeepers in order to give South African goalkeepers a chance to come in. But isn't the problem maybe also that some of these old players don't want to transition? You know, we've seen so many stories. Happy Chele was the same when offered a role at Orlando Pirates. He allegedly decided to leave. When we speak about Mokoena, who were essentially forced into becoming ambassadors and into becoming other types of players. Do we maybe have a problem in the PSL that we don't know what to do when the players get older? We don't know what to do when we have to transition these guys. And maybe we give them too many chances to come back and play. We hold on for so long. Listen to what happened when Ukhosh Manqoba benched Uthemba Zwane. And Themba Zwane, I'm not saying that he doesn't have more to give the game. I'm not saying that he should be shipped out and that we should forget what he's done for Mamelodi Sundowns. What I'm saying is, what is the plan? What is the perception of the plan too? Because Kibadi fans, we see him on the bench and we freak out. Mamelodi Sundowns has been playing relatively well. Bafana. We're still looking at guys like Themba Zwane in order to hold the national team up. You know, we have a league that has a DDC that claims to be producing players at a high rate, but those players don't have places to go in the first team lineups. And if these players are even holding on past the point of being replaced, how many replacements have come in for Itumeleng Khune right now? We've seen about Ntwari, we've seen about Akpay, about Vuma, we've seen about Peterson, who are still there. If that line is already full, why are you still holding on to try play? And who is advising our players? Surely you would have seen all of the people coming in. And maybe this should be a conversation about the teams as well. What conversations are teams having with these players? Are they upfront with them to say, Guy, you're ending now, you're finishing now. You know, we're going to try to transition you elsewhere. I thought when Dinkalaka was the goalkeeper coach for Kaizer Chiefs, I believe he came with Ernst Middendorp, and he was one of the best goalkeeper coaches that we had. He stayed past Coach Middendorp being there, eventually left, but he was brought back last season to be a consultant, sort of. And the thinking was, or I believe the thinking was that Kaizer Chiefs was saying, okay, fine, Itumeleng Khune, sit down with Dinkalaka, learn as much as you can from him, and then you're going to be the guy that takes over from there. You're going to be the guy that steps in as a legend of ours. You could even see him training, accepting guests, doing all of the ceremonial things as an ambassador. But then come the last game when they made him play go FNB, pretty much an empty FNB stadium, they gave him a plaque with a signed jersey and they celebrated all of the years that was there. It felt as though Chiefs was telling him that you're done. He came out, of course, and said, no, it was just a long service award and all of that type of stuff. But are teams being honest with these players when they reach the end? Are teams equipping these players for the end? So if you're seeing that he's leaving, why don't you let him do his licenses? You know, what's happening at TS Galaxy is very good with Bernard Parker. I believe he's the DDC coach. I believe at times he's the one who sits in for Sid Ramovic, even though he's still playing. I think they're getting him ready for a managerial role. And I think that's how you are meant to do it. But we also have to look at ourselves and say, are we ready to watch these players transition out? And are we providing room for them to leave? You know, we can't keep crying for Tembazani to come back as an example. But yeah, that was a conversation that I wanted to have over there. Let's move on to VAR. Yay, so much has happened this week, man. Kaizer Chiefs, when Kaizer Chiefs is back and there's noise around Kaizer Chiefs, everything shifts. This past weekend, Kaizer Chiefs played Mamelodi Sundowns at FNB Stadium and unfortunately lost 2-1 to Masandawana. But there was a lot of controversies that were spoken about. There was an offside, an apparent offside, an alleged offside goal. There was a push in the box that people didn't see for the last goal at Chiefs that was disallowed. And there was so much noise on socials about how Kaizer Chiefs was robbed. And it even became a big deal with both Victor Hlongwane coming out and having to draw lines on Soccer Zone in order to show us this and that. Even Gayton McKenzie, sports minister, came out to say he wants VAR. VAR must come as soon as possible. He's going to schedule meetings with the PSL and SAFA as soon as possible. Now, the first part I want to touch on is why don't we have VAR? Let's speak a little bit about VAR, the video assistant ref. So the video assistant ref system is, I believe it was 48 cameras, if I'm not mistaken, at a stadium that capture all angles, and then that is routed to a VAR hub where other referees sit and, pause, slow-mo, replay, zoom in, do all those type of things in order to help the ref for decisions that maybe that aren't as clear. So, for example, VAR would work if a goal is scored, but there was a foul, and VAR would say, no, because there was a foul in the build-up, we're taking that away. When you look at offsides, the big one that everybody speaks about, where they draw the line and they try to determine whether a player is offside or not, is offside or onside, how the player is running, that is essentially the VAR system. We saw it deployed at AFCON. We've seen it in Europe for a very long time. Part of the problem with VAR is that it's very expensive. So, number one, the expenses are very high. To equip every stadium with that technology means that we'll be spending a reported $3 to $5 million per stadium per year in order to make sure that those technologies are at those stadiums. So if you look at the PSL, I'd say we have around 10 to 15 stadiums that are used in the PSL, but of those stadiums, there's only maybe 10 or so that are stadiums that can be equipped with VAR, that meet the requirements for VAR. So if you remember correctly, there was a conversation about Lucas Moripe Stadium, which apparently didn't meet the requirements for it. That's why CAF games and AFL games were taken to Loftus, for example. So if you think about Bo Kingswell Tini Stadium, if you think about Bo Danny Craven Stadium, those stadiums are not up to the required standard for VAR. So that would mean either finding new stadiums or playing games at the same handful of stadiums in order to accommodate this VAR. And those are all pretty pricey options on that side. The other side is FIFA has to sanction it. They have to agree. So FIFA has only two, if I'm not mistaken, two vendors for VAR in the whole world. And you're not allowed to go and do other things. So for example, many people have said, why don't you go to Supersport and ask them, since they already have the tech and the cameras and all of that available at the stadium, would it be that far of a jump in order to take that technology and maybe just add on what FIFA mandates the tech to be, and that would be a lot cheaper. And because DStv and Supersport are partners with the PSL, that would be an easier place to start. But unfortunately, it's not allowed. Then there's also the training of referees. So all of the referees that will be taking part in the VAR system would have to be trained. All of them would have to undergo training with Jerome Damon at CAF, and that is also costly and timely. So it's not something that you can put in just in J. You can't wake up in the morning and say we want VAR. There's a lot of steps and ticks. There's a lot of tips and requirements that have to be accounted for before you could even get to the point where you start moving forward with VAR. So there's that part. But then in our context, there's also the political part. We all know that SAFA and the PSL have a very shaky relationship. SAFA and the PSL are meant to be, you know, mother body and parent company and company, with SAFA being the head and PSL being an arm of SAFA. But how it works currently is that they're almost separate and they're cooperating, not necessarily working together. So the PSL runs as its own body and SAFA runs as its own body. And what that means is things like referees also fall into that. So the PSL doesn't provide referees. They get the referees from SAFA. Now, because those two are bickering and fighting between each other and don't see eye to eye, what tends to happen is when decisions have to be made that affect both, take for example this refereeing conversation, a very simple thing to get out of it would be, listen, who's going to pay for this? PSL, we don't run the referees. Why would we pay for VAR and their training and all of those things when we are essentially borrowing them, renting them from SAFA? And SAFA will look at the PSL and say, why should we pay for all of that when you guys have commercial partners and commercial sponsorship and could probably afford this whole thing? We are cash strapped, we struggle with the money, hey, we know the different things that happen behind the scenes. So that is part of the reason why we don't have VAR. But the thing I want to speak about is maybe a logical step, a logical discussion. So everybody that we see on social media, that I've had discussions with, that we've seen, speaks about brown bags. Brown paper bags, allegedly refs being given brown paper bags. They speak about the refs taking bribes, allegedly. Some people have gone as far as to say that it's a norm in South African football. So if we're going to use that logic, let's use that logic. Why would I want VAR to come into the league? If I'm a team that knows that, hey, when push comes to shove, I'm facing relegation, I'm trying to get top 8, I'm trying to snap a losing streak, I'm trying to put my team into a better position. I'm trying to do those things. And I know that it's a brown bag away. Why would I want VAR to be implemented in that league? If you look at the referees, right? If VAR is going to take away my ability to get brown paper bags, it's going to cause a lot of friction when people are watching live, my mistakes. It's going to do all of those things. Why would I want VAR to be implemented? And this is now not something that I believe, but I want us to go down that logic hole. Why would you bring VAR in then? Because it seems it will inconvenience more people than it will help from their side. Yes, us as fans will be saying, hey guys, look at this was right, that was wrong, all of those type of things. But at the end of the day, if the governing bodies don't want to get it in, and it stands to hurt them, what incentive do they have to move it along? What incentive do they have to come and bring this thing here? I don't think VAR is that much of a difficult thing to bring in. In SA, maybe in other African countries, it's a little bit harder. Then I want to speak about the effectiveness of VAR. Guys, we all watch the English Premiership, and we all see PG Mole, the refereeing company, we all see them come out and apologize to teams. No, this thing was wrong and that choice, that decision was the wrong one, and we apologize to Arsenal. It wasn't this. They rescind red cards. They take back yellow cards. They take back suspensions. They do all type of things in retrospect. How effective is VAR then going to be? Because all of those things that are being done can be done post-matches. If a ref makes a mistake, there's no game that's going to start over. There's no goal that's going to be given. There's no, there's nothing you can do once the decision has been made. So what type of help is VAR going to make? And if we're also complaining about the refs and people are questioning their competency and how good they are and can you ref and do you know the laws and do you know this and do you know that? When we look at that, then those are the same guys that are going to be sitting in the VAR booth. I think all of us have heard audio that comes from England where the ref said, no, I'm not changing this decision. We've all heard audio of VAR saying, hey, it's a tight one, Nati, we don't know. We've all seen that VAR, in its most basic form, can't account that much for the offsides, for example. We've seen those lines that are drawn and then they draw a line up and they try to justify this one is offside because of 1, 2, and 3, 4. We see that every day for soccer zone. What difference would that be? What difference would that make in the league? And if you want to then go to the more advanced ones where you bring in goal line technology, where you bring in things like the offsides being an automated thing where they can do a 3D mapping and draw a line and tell you where his nose was over or his forehead, those are even more costs on top of that. In fact, we saw at AFCON, some of the refs were just like, I refuse. I'm not going there. We've seen in the CAF Champions League where Yanga was complaining about a ball that they believe bounced inside before bouncing out, that they were cheated. There was no conclusive evidence that could come from the VAR. There was none. There was no angle. They didn't have the right angle. They didn't have the tech for goal line technology. They didn't have all those things. So, what is VAR going to give us? If it's that in the moment you get to know that it's right or wrong, fine. The ref has made a mistake. How different is it to waiting for Monday when Victor Hlongwane breaks it down or Ace Ngobo breaks it down on Supersport? How different is it to that? Because there's no recourse. And if it is really a situation where red cards must be taken back and all of that stuff, there's a match report that's done after every game. The refereeing body, the head of referees, the SAFA referees body, already does those things. We've heard about, we've seen refs getting suspended. We've seen refs getting kicked out. We've seen cards rescinded. So what difference really would VAR make? If the personnel is not changing, if the decision is not changing, if your team is still going to lose at the end of the day, why are we in such a rush to try get it? But in any case, let's move on to the second last topic, which is a topic about the AFL, the African Football League. Now, for those who are unfamiliar, the African Football League is basically the rebranded African Super League. It was an idea brought in by CAF President Gianni Infantino, where certain teams or where a league would be created of the best teams on the continent, and we'd watch them all play each other in order to try get more money into the organization, into the association, CAF, in order to bring more excitement to the game. So if you're only watching Mamelodi Sundowns versus Ahly once every 3 years, those two games, what if you could see Mamelodi Sundowns versus Ahly every single year, but not only see that, see them in a league where Ahly, Mamelodi Sundowns, Wydad, TP Mazembe, Petro de Luanda, Simba, Yanga, possibly Chiefs, Pirates, possibly other big teams, Bobo, Belouizdad, Debo, St. Eloi Lupopo, those type of teams all coming together and playing in one league. It was in response to the European Super League, which failed, where teams like Arsenal, Manchester United, Barcelona, Real Madrid, Juventus, and all those guys were threatening to start their own league outside of FIFA structures, take it to a place like Saudi Arabia and have all of the best teams in the world play together and generate more money for the clubs. The idea was that the big clubs are the ones bringing in money in Europe. So it's unfair for me to share my TV deal money with the rest of the league if I'm the one bringing in the money. So give me a chance to go and create a league elsewhere, which is very important because that was the thinking behind the European Super League. That was why they wanted to do it. It wasn't to uplift football and all of that. It was teams wanting to bring more money into their own coffers because they felt as though they could generate more money on their own rather than being stuck in these leagues where you have to share. So the idea was brought to Africa and it was pitched as the Super League, then rebranded to the African Football League, and we had our first iteration last year. Last year, 8 teams took part in the tournament, which was won by Mamelodi Sundowns at the end, becoming the inaugural winners of the AFL. Plenty of questions existed around the AFL's validity and whether it could work. There were already issues with timing. So if you remember, the PSL last year said, had a long thing with CAF to say, guys, this AFL, if you guys want to do this over a month mid-season, you are moving so many of our fixtures, and now we have to figure out where to put everybody else in order to make way for Mamelodi Sundowns not being there for a month. So it became a date nightmare, like an actual game day nightmare, because now Skukune might have booked for a game that's happening on the 26th of March, but now you can't do it, and because of short notice, you have to plug more money into then getting your costs for the next game. So your travel costs, your accommodation, all of that stuff would now be an extra cost on the teams. And the idea was that this year, the AFL was going to be expanded to 24 teams. So it's going to be 24 of the highest ranked teams in Africa who are going to take part in this tournament, which meant more time. Now, currently in world football, something that is happening is that a lot of the big players, most recently it was Rodri who spoke out, are complaining that they're playing too many games. They're playing in the league and then having to play in your cups and then having to play in the Champions League, then having to go play a thing like the AFL, then having to go play the Club World Cup games. Now it's expanded, 32 teams in the Club World Cup. It's too much games, it's too many games for these players. If you think about Mamelodi Sundowns, there's 30 games in the league. Then you add MTN 8. Then you add Nedbank Cup Carling Knockout. Then you add CAF Champions League. Then they're still going to the World Cup next year. It wasn't going to work on a few levels. But they tried it out. It worked well last season. They got some hype. They had all of that. But according to a CAF insider, the tournament has been cancelled for this year, and they're going to try regroup for next year. Apparently, they were facing a nightmare of finding the dates and organizing everything and putting it together in this time. And I feel that that fight around the world that's happening with the number of games that players are playing, I think it had a very big say in what was happening here. But what I want to speak about is more on the side of the idea of the tournament. And maybe the question should be, do we need new tournaments in Africa, or do we need more opportunities for other teams to take part? So I believe that the AFL was actually, and this is all alleged, I don't have inside info on this, but I believe that this was a trial by FIFA to see if they could entice those teams that were wanting to leave their leagues and go form the Super League into playing in FIFA Super League instead of their own Super League. And I think the reason why the AFL fell out of being something that is viable has very little to do with the dates, but more to do with the fact that Europe went and made their own way around all of these things. So Europe expanded the UEFA Champions League. So right now, we're watching a Champions League that has changed into a big group format. We're watching a Champions League that has more teams with more games. And I think the moment those changes were made, once they tweaked that, it made the AFL AFL irrelevant. It made that experiment of the AFL irrelevant, that we're running this thing in Africa, but we've already solved the Champions League. You look at the Club World Cup. The Club World Cup is also expanded. They're bringing in more teams. They're giving those teams another chance to make money, another chance to get exposure, another chance to get a TV deal, another chance to do all of the things that they were wanting to do with their own Super League. And Africa is the safest way, or the safest place, to pilot these things, to try them out. So I think that is why the AFL is out. But again, my issue with it is, and my issue with the AFL from the beginning was very simple. If you look at the last 8 teams in the CAF Champions League, you'll point at the same guys: ES Tunis, Ahly, Mamelodi Sundowns, Wydad Casablanca, TP Mazembe, Atletico de Luanda, Petro de Luanda, Atleticos Patrolios. You look at certain teams that consistently make it to the last 8. If you look at the guys that get into the Champions League, fine, there's 16 teams, but it's usually pretty much the same teams. Why give those teams another opportunity to have another trophy when you could maybe open it up? Guys, our Champions League is 16 teams. Our CAF Confed is 16 teams. That's 32 teams, all in all. The Champions League in Europe is 40 teams now. Europa is 40 teams. That's 80 teams that are taking part. 80 teams plus a conference league. Plus a conference league. And do you know what that allows? That allows even the smaller teams to go out and make their money. Whereas here we have only 32 teams that can possibly make money. And we've got a Confed Cup, for example, that hasn't been given any shine, any marketing, any push. So shouldn't they be looking to bring in more teams to get a seat at the table, or expand that Champions League then? Make that the expansion. Expand your Confed, make that the expansion, so that teams like Abo Jwaneng, Abo Disciples, Abo Nwadibu, those type of teams can also play in a tournament that can be lucrative for them too. Attracting money to the top end and rewarding the teams that already have money doesn't make sense for me in the African context. So for example, think about Mamelodi Sundowns. Mamelodi Sundowns, we all know that funding comes from the Motsepe Foundation. We all know that the Motsepe has spent over R1 billion in terms of that club since he's taken over. You look at your Al-Ahlis, who, if you think Sundowns is spending, Al-Ahly is spending 5 times what Sundowns is spending, 10 times what Sundowns is spending. If you look at your Wydads, if you look at those countries, those teams that make it towards the end, they're usually from up north and they have a lot of money. Why then give them a chance to win 72 million, I believe 72 million rand in the CAF Champions League, then another 72 in the AFL, then, oh, by the way, you're going to, by virtue of being one of the teams that finished 1, 2, and 3 or whatever, you're going to also go to the CAF, to the Club World Cup, where it's R1 billion just for participating. Then we wonder why those other teams who are complaining about travel, who are complaining about, taking part in these things, who are complaining about their players being tired, who are complaining. Guys, there are teams that drive for 24 hours to go play some of these games. 24 hours in a van. It was a team from the Ivory Coast, if I'm not mistaken. In a van. All the players were driving now. 24 hours. Some teams have to sleep at those places. Some teams struggle. Shouldn't you be giving those teams a chance to get a bite of the cherry? A better bite of the cherry? Luckily now, to CAF's benefit, they did start giving teams money for participating in the prelims. But we still have a long way to go, and maybe that's the answer instead of just focusing on the top. It's also why it failed in Europe. So the reason why it failed in a lot of the countries in Europe is that the rest of the teams in the league said, Mara, you guys are here because of us. Now, if you guys go out and start your own league and make your own money, what are you doing to the watchability of our league? What are you doing to the money that's coming into our league? How are we going to stand to benefit from these things? I mean, CAF had said they're going to give, what, $2 million, $1 million to each federation? That's 20 million rand. Now imagine SAFA getting 20 million rand and having to apportion that to SAB, to Motsepe Foundation, to the national teams and all of that stuff. It turns out that it's a small amount of money for the amount of money that is being attracted. So I think CAF is going to have to look into those type of things and really try to find answers in that regard, rather than, you know, going out and creating star-studded competitions that are going to put everybody into trouble. Now every league has to figure out how we're going to change our dates, how we're going to accommodate these clubs, how we're going to make sure that our leagues are not going to be running for a month, or X amount of teams are going to be leaving our leagues to go play in this thing. And then when the calendar comes to an end, or when the league comes to an end, you have to play 5, 6, 7, 8 games in hand because these teams are not there. So I'm sad because the AFL could have been something greater. I'm sad because maybe CAF was going to just default to what it has already. One of the discussions was that the CAF Confed was going to go away and the AFL would replace the CAF Confed Cup. But even with that, it would still be the same format. And you would allow even less teams to take part. So that is the chat about the AFL. Let's go to the last topic. The last topic we have here is, of course, the MTN8 final. The MTN8 final is an exciting game, very exciting game. And I think it's only fitting that the only 2 teams to win domestic cup competitions last year are taking part in this final. I love that Stellenbosch is raising their hand. And even if it's just the one team, this Stellenbosch, that's fighting against Nabo Sundowns, Nabo Pirates, getting these trophies and being here, it's good that at least somebody has woken up and somebody's taking these things seriously. So the MTN8 is going to be very, very interesting. Can Pirates win their 3rd MTN8 trophy in a row? You know, Jose Rivero is a cup king. Jose Rivero, hey, 4 trophies in 2 years. Going for his 5th one. I think he's played just finals except for the Carling knockout. Incredible record. Then you have Steve Buck on the other end, who's won the Carling knockout last year with Stellenbosch, his first trophy. That team is fighting. And what's going to be very interesting about that team is, or that final, is looking at the 2 teams. Stellenbosch lost a lot of key players. You know, you speak about your Van Rooyens, you speak about your Reynerses, you speak about a lot of players that have left that were key players for that team. I believe Antonio van Veek is now playing in Austria. And I'm one of the people that thought that this was going to be the end for Stellenbosch. I thought Stellenbosch has done such a big mistake with letting these guys go. How can they compete? How can they play? But they've shown, or Steve Buck has shown, that he's got a few more tricks up his sleeve than what we think. Brought in Mjela, brought in Abu Barnes, you know, changed the way they play, the way they attack. De Jong is now a very important player in the league. You look at how Sage Stevens has been performing. You look at that defense. There's so many good things that Stellenbosch is doing. And what's very interesting is that that new style of play that they have, which is forward pressing. They almost give three players the ability to go forward at all times. So they put you under pressure. They win the ball back high. They do those type of things. It's very different to what they played last season, where they would sit back and then hit you on the counter with Reyners and Van Veek, or Reyners and Titus. That's how they used to play. Defend, 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 pounce. That's how they beat Pirates last season, first game that they played. I believe it was Pirates versus Stellenbosch, where Stellenbosch won 1-0 on a counter. But what's also very interesting is that this Pirates is not the same Pirates that we know of old. So Orlando Pirates this season has been playing a different game, a patient game. Some might say a more continental man, an African type of game where, you know, they might not be in it the whole time, but they'll hold the ball, they'll wait, and the moment you make a mistake, they'll pounce on you, which is different to, I'd say, the heavy metal football that Pirates was playing all through last season, where it was attack, 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 Fukeng, Tito, yeah, Yazi, high octane, 200 kilometers an hour, you just keep running and running and running. Now, our Tito can disappear for a game and reappear when it's important. So I think going into this game, if this was last year and a new Stellies team was playing versus old Pirates, I'd probably give it to Stellies because they would catch Pirates off a few times and transition on them. But this new Pirates, they make it so hard to beat them. And kudos to Coach Rivero. Kudos to Coach Rivero for, you know, evolving. One of the big things we used to complain about with Orlando Pirates was on a random Tuesday, it's so hard. It would be so hard for Pirates to win those games. So if it's a rainy Tuesday, if it's a game that doesn't matter and you're playing versus Richards Bay or Chippa United, they lose those games not because they're bad, but more because they'd lose concentration. And now they're showing that, no, guys, we can concentrate for 80 minutes if we need to. We can punch you and score if we need to. So the transformation of Pirates has been incredible to watch, and I want to see how long they can keep it up this season, because one of the theories is that maybe Pirates is doing so well because they don't have time to get out of cup mode. So we all know that Pirates is a cup team. Pirates comes out and wins all of their cup games. That's it. Pirates in the cup. They will show you football that you've never seen. They will play incredible football. But then in that time where they get to rest and they now have to go play the unimportant games, they fell off. But now, because they've been playing every 3 games, they've been playing CAF games. I believe they've played now, if I'm not mistaken, it's 11 games, 10 or 11 games. They've won 8 and they've only drawn 2, unbeaten up to this point. Maybe part of that reason that, you know, they're doing so well is because they don't have time to switch off. But we'll see when they play versus this Stellies team now. Of course, obviously it's a final, so we expect Pirates to be up for it. But it's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a tough game. I believe Stellies beat Pirates last season in the Nedbank, is it not Nedbank, in the MTN 8, but they'd already done the job away, Pirates. But if there's a team that could beat Pirates last season, it was Sundowns and it was Stellenbosch. So let's see how this is going to pan out. I'll give you guys my predictions tomorrow. I'll release a video where we'll speak properly about the preview of the game, and I'll tell you what I'm thinking and where the odds lie. But I just wanted to say that I am so excited for this MTN 8 final. I think we're going to see some really incredible football. Both teams have been playing some great football. And well done to Stellies, man. Well done to Stellies. A team that nobody was expecting to do big things. You know, a team that we thought would fall away like a SuperSport has done in the years, like a Cape Town City. They're fighting. Now, does it mean that in the future they're not going to fall off? I don't know. But for now, you have to give credit where credit is due. Well done to Stellies, and well done to Orlando Pirates for another final. Hey, another final. Man. Guys, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been the George Mokoena Show. Please, please, please like and subscribe and follow and share this. This video, if you did come in late, will be available in full on YouTube. So you will be able to watch it. I will upload it also on Facebook. So please support and watch those. Watch the previous episodes. Watch the content that I put out. I put out content almost daily, so support that too, guys. There's not many platforms that do these type of things, especially for local football. If you want to interact with me more, Monday to Thursday at 7 p.m. is the other show, the normal show, the Overthinking Football Show. That is where you can jump in and have conversations with me, where I speak to you and I ask you questions about whatever it is we're speaking about. Also, if Chiefs, Pirates, Sundowns, Bafana, Banyana Bastyle, UWC, if they're playing, we will be here covering those games, live watch-alongs, where again you can jump in and give me your thoughts about what you're seeing in the games. Guys, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for the support you've shown me up to this point. And also, guys, it's my birthday, so please, man, write on the wall, send some comments. Yeah, we're growing older and we're growing to try grow these platforms too. So thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you guys tonight at 7. Bye, everyone.